50 years ago, a tiny music scene centred in Canterbury in the UK gave birth to a sound that really still inspires artists today. Now, here's the real question though. Which of these legendary bands from that location do you actually know and remember? You can let me know at the end of this video, but first, let's dive in and take a look at the bands. So I'm running through this one chronologically, and I'm starting with the Wilde, who were considered the proto-Canterbury band. Several of its members went on to form Soft Machine and Caravan, more on those later, though they never actually released an official album as such during their active years. Their recordings later emerged as influential documents of the scene. Members included the likes of Robert Wyatt, Hugh Harper and Kevin Ayres, who were all pivotal in defining the experimental yet melodic tone that would characterise Canterbury bands. Their influence is often underestimated because they were more of a training ground for the legendary bands that followed. But the Wildflowers' legacy is mainly seen in their former band members' future projects. They remained a cornerstone in understanding the origins of Canterbury prog. A Soft Machine were formed in 1966 and quickly became the flagship band of the scene. Initially blending some psychedelic rock with jazz influences, they helped to define the experimental edge of progressive music. Early albums like The Soft Machine in 1968 and Volume 2 in 1969, these showcased extended improvisation and Robert Wyatt's drumming and vocals providing a distinct character, while Mike Ratledge's keyboards brought some avant-garde textures. Now, by the early 1970s, Soft Machine had moved further into jazz fusion, and they were influencing countless musicians. Their lineup changes allowed the talents like Hugh Harper and Carl Jenkins to contribute significantly. Soft Machine's longevity and continual reinvention solidified their place as the most iconic Canterbury band. Kevin Ayres, who'd emerged from the Wildflowers and was a founding member of Soft Machine before pursuing his own solo career. Albums like Joy of the Toy from '69 and Shooting at the Moon from 1970 really exemplify his creativity and connection to the Canterbury ethos. His solo work, though, emphasised accessibility without sacrificing experimentalism. Ayres' influence extended to later progressive and alternative artists in Britain and Europe. He embodied that light-hearted yet sophisticated side of the Canterbury sound. Robert Wyatt is best known as Soft Machine's original drummer and vocalist. His work blends jazz, progressive rock and avant-garde experimentation, and these were often infused with political and social commentary. Wyatt's solo albums such as Rock Bottom in 1974 are really considered masterpieces of emotional depth and musical sophistication. His fragile yet expressive voice really became a defining feature of the Canterbury style. Now, despite a life-changing accident in 1973 that really left him paralysed from the waist down, he continued to create influential music, and fair play to him. He remains a revered figure in both prog and avant-garde music communities. Now, Caravan formed in 1968 and became one of the most melodic and enduring of the Canterbury bands. Albums like In the Land of Grey and Pink from 1971 are celebrated for lush arrangements, playful lyrics, and intricate instrumental passages. Caravan songs often feature extended suites with improvisational sections reminiscent of jazz. But unlike some contemporaries, Caravan made a strong sense of melody and storytelling. Their live performances were legendary for musicianship and also for humour, and they remain one of the most accessible gateways to Canterbury prog for any new listeners. Now, Delivery was a blues-influenced experimental band that contributed to the early Canterbury scene. Featuring future Soft Machine members Phil Miller and Lol Coxhill, though they were short-lived, they were critical in shaping the improvisational and collaborative culture of Canterbury. Delivery's music had a raw exploratory quality that influenced the subsequent jazz rock fusion projects of its members. Delivery directly fed into the formation of several key Canterbury offshoots in the early 1970s. And despite limited recordings, their historical significance is really widely recognised. So, though not strictly fully Canterbury, Camel shared many sonic and stylistic connections with the scene. Formed in 1968, they combined progressive rock with melodic jazz influences. Albums like The Snow Goose from 1975 highlighted narrative-driven suites and virtuoso musicianship reminiscent of Canterbury. Camel's connection to Canterbury really lies in that shared improvisational approach. Their longevity demonstrates the global impact of the scene's sound. They remain that bridge between mainstream prog and Canterbury's experimental edge. Arzacle, a band that was originally called Uriel, really was a short-lived psychedelic rock project that included Steve Hillage and Dave Stewart. They recorded one eponymous album in 1969, which has since become a cult classic. No other way to describe it. Now, the band's improvisational jams foreshadowed the jazz rock fusion that would dominate the early 70s scene. Though only active briefly, Arzacle showcased the experimental curiosity of Canterbury musicians. This album is often cited as an essential underground artifact for prog enthusiasts. Now, Egg were a progressive rock trio that really specialised in avant-garde compositions and complex classical influences. Formed in 1969, they included Dave Stewart on keyboards, whose later work with Hatfield in the North furthered the scene's development. Their music often explored abstract concepts and unusual structures, reflecting perhaps a more cerebral side of Canterbury. Egg had a devoted cult following, particularly among fans of instrumental virtuosity. Their influence extended to both jazz fusion and progressive rock musicians. But the band dissolved in the mid-1970s. It did leave a lasting legacy in the experimental wing of the scene. Matching Mole was Robert Wyatt's post-Soft Machine project, formed in 1971. The band's name is a pun on machine mort, soft machine in French. Now, Matching Mole explored softer, more melodic and whimsical elements compared to Soft Machine's original jazz fusion focus. Album like the self-titled Matching Mole in 1972 combined progressive structures with some emotional lyrics and Wyatt's distinctive voice. The band included members from the Canterbury Scene such as Phil Miller and Dave McRae. Their music emphasised experimentation with song forms and unconventional instrumentation. Matching Mole reinforced the collaborative and improvisational ethos of the Canterbury network. Now, despite its brief existence, the band produced some of the most emotionally compelling work from the scene. Caravan were a band formed by guitarist Steve Hillage in 1971 and became a short-lived but really influential Canterbury band. The band's solo album, Space Shanty in 1972, really is noted for its melodic guitar work, its lush harmonies, and those whimsical lyrics. Members included Nick Greenwood and Pip Pyle, who were central figures in the Canterbury scene. Caravan's sound bridges with the psychedelic origins of the scene with its more progressive jazz rock era. Though they disbanded quickly, the album remains a favourite among collectors and enthusiasts. It did help to establish Steve Hillage as one of the Canterbury's most innovative guitarists. The band's approach influenced subsequent Hillage-led projects. Favourite of mine, Gong, formed by David Allen in 1970, is often associated with the Canterbury Psych crossover. Their music mixes space rock, jazz fusion, and really some absurdist humour into elaborate concept albums. These included the likes of Camembert Electric in 1971 and Flying Teapot in 1973, and these demonstrated their surreal experimental approach. Gong's lineup included Canterbury luminaries such as Didier Malherbe and Steve Hillage. The band's mythology and theatricality distinguished them from other prog acts. This improvisational style and complex arrangements really allowing them closely with the Canterbury traditions. They became influential worldwide, merging progressive rock with psychedelic storytelling. The band has continued in various forms, maintaining a cult following well into the 21st century. Steve Hillage, as a solo artist, became a key figure in Canterbury prog after his time with Kahn and Gung. His solo work in the 1970s included albums like Fish Rising in 1975, which blends psychedelic rock, jazz fusion, and electronic experimentation. Hillage's guitar work is distinguished by being melodic, virtuosic, and really heavily effect-driven, embodying the Canterbury sound's adventurous spirit. He collaborated with numerous Canterbury musicians, strengthening the scene's network. Hillage also contributed to progressive projects like System 7, blending ambient and electronic textures. He remains a bridge between that classic Canterbury prog and the modern experimental rock. Gilgamesh was a jazz fusion ensemble emerging in the early 1970s. Led by keyboardist Al McGowan, albums like the self-titled one from 1975 really exemplify those intricate arrangements and a balance between structure and freedom. The band included members who later joined National Health, strengthening that Canterbury lineage. Gilgamesh are noted for their intellectual approach to fusion. Their music appealed to really quite a niche audience seeking technical sophistication. They're not really commercially successful. They remain highly respected among prog and fusion fans. It represented that cerebral, avant-garde side of Canterbury. Isotope were a British jazz rock band led by guitarist Gally Boyle, and he was influenced well by the Canterbury style. Albums like the self-titled Isotope in 1974 really demonstrated this melodic interplay between keyboards, guitar and rhythm section. They performed extensively in the UK and Europe, and they gained quite a following among progressive music fans. They shared Canterbury musicianship values, including improvisation and collaborative creativity. And although they were short-lived, their recordings remain valuable references for the whole of the scene. Their style exemplifies exactly what Canterbury's exploratory yet melodic tradition was all about. Hatfield and the North next is one of the most celebrated Canterbury bands, known for, once again, blending this jazz, rock and whimsical lyrics. Their self-titled album from 1974 and the Rotters Club from 1975, these are really iconic examples of the melodic complexity and sophisticated arrangement that they offered. Key members included Phil Miller on guitar, Pip Pyle on drums, and Richard Sinclair on bass and vocals. Hatfield and the North influenced National Health and later Canterbury offshoots. They epitomised the balance between technical mastery and playful creativity. The band's legacy continues to inspire prog and jazz fusion artists. The sound is instantly recognisable as quintessential Canterbury. We spoke about National Health, and these really emerged from the remnants of Hatfield and the North network, and these featured Alan Gowan and Phil Miller, basically. They are known for complex, highly orchestrated jazz rock compositions. Their self-titled album in 1978, and also of Q's and Cures in the same year, really showcased intricate melodies, improvisation, and precise ensemble playing. The band frequently shifted lineups, incorporating key Canterbury musicians such as Dave Stewart and Pip Pyle. National Health represented the pinnacle of technical sophistication in the scene. Their music emphasised compositional rigour whilst retaining the humour and playfulness of Canterbury. They are revered by prog enthusiasts. Phil Miller formed In Cahoots in the late 70s as a jazz rock ensemble, continuing that Canterbury tradition. Albums like Cutting Both Ways in 1987 really show off what Miller's intricate guitar work and sophisticated ensemble interplay was all about. The members included other Canterbury luminaries, keeping the scene's collaborative spirit alive. In Cahoots often performed live, the band's work demonstrated this evolution of Canterbury into the late 20th century. They maintained the scene's balance of intellect, humour and melodic sensibility. Quiet Sun were an experimental prog band active in the early 1970s. Led by keyboardist Phil Manzarina, their work combined complex arrangements with jazz rock improvisation. The album Mainstream in 1975 was released after the band dissolved, though, gaining quite a cult following. Quiet Sun's sound is characterised by intricate instrumental passages, and adventurous harmonies. Members later contributed to projects like 801 and other Canterbury-related collaborations. They were the epitome of cerebral and exploratory side of the scene. Though short-lived, Quiet Sun left a lasting impression on Canterbury prog enthusiasts. Their approach influenced both contemporary and later fusion musicians. Now, Centipede were led by Keith Tippett, who was a massive jazz rock collective including Canterbury-affiliated musicians, often with dozens of performers on stage. Their solo album, Septober Energy, in 1971, is a sprawling experimental masterpiece. Centipede emphasized improvisational complex arrangements and collective energy. Members included Elton Dean and other Canterbury figures, bridging the scene to a larger jazz rock experiments. Their music is challenging, ambitious, and uniquely experimental. Centipede represented the boundary-pushing ethos of Canterbury musicians. Despite this limited commercial appeal, they remain a milestone in progressive and jazz rock history. Coss is a modern band heavily inspired by Canterbury aesthetics, formed in the 1990s. They pay homage to bands like Soft Machine, Hatfield and the North, and Caravan. Coss's albums reflected really a revivalist approach whilst incorporating contemporary prog rock elements. They attracted both older prog fans and some of the newer listeners seeking melodic experimentation, perhaps for the first time. Their style highlighted the enduring influence of the Canterbury beyond the UK. Now, the Ottawa Music Company emerged from ex-members and explored avant-garde jazz rock fusion. The group exemplified Canterbury's cerebral and experimental side. Though less commercially visible, they were highly respected amongst prog aficionados. Albums and live recordings showcase really a balance between structure and spontaneity. Members frequently collaborated with other Canterbury luminaries. The Ottawa Music Company highlights the scene's intellectual and boundary-pushing tendencies. It represented a late-stage extension of the Egg and broader Canterbury legacy. Wow, what a journey through Canterbury scene, from Soft Machine to Caravan, Hatfield and the North, and beyond. These bands truly shaped some of our prog history. But now it's your turn. Which of these Canterbury's bands do you think deserves the crown as the greatest of them all? Drop your thoughts in the comments if you will, and I'll be reading them all. Now, if you've enjoyed this dive into prog's best kept secrets, hit that like button for me if you will, subscribe and ring the bell so you don't really miss the next deep cut into progressive rock history. And if you're hungry for some more, check out this video right here on some of the best album releases of 1970s. Trust me, you don't want to be missing these.